Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a dynamic that absolutely defines the success, or frankly, the total failure of almost every modern business. We hear a lot about the magic of innovation, right? But here's the hard truth. Raw innovation alone is basically useless without a master plan to guide it. I mean, you can literally have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to manage the change required to actually implement it, that idea, it's never going to see the light of day. To really put this into perspective, I want to start you off with a pretty wild statistic. According to research from McKinsey, a whopping 84% of executives consider innovation absolutely crucial to their growth strategy. Think about that for a second. The vast majority of business leaders out there know for a fact they need to innovate to survive. And yet, so many organizations completely fail to realize that growth. So, what does this all mean? Why is there such a massive gap between wanting to innovate and actually benefiting from it? Well, it all comes down to how organizations manage the chaotic, messy process of change. So to understand this gap, we really need to look at the contrast between a raw idea and its execution. It's the classic idea versus execution battle. On one side, we have innovation. Innovation is that creative spark, right? It generates the fresh ideas and all that potential value. But on the other side, we have strategy and change management. According to our sources, strategy provides the structured plan you need to ensure that your innovation is actually harnessed to commercial discipline. This means that while innovation is the catalyst that creates the value, change management is the structural discipline required to capture that value and make it a reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The demand for innovation. 2. Organizational inertia. 3. Types of change. 4. Lewin's change model. 5. Overcoming resistance. And 6. Making the strategy stick.
Section 1. The demand for innovation. Adapting to survive. In today's hyper-connected world, innovation is a necessary disruptor. Organizations are constantly facing these accelerated external changes. We're talking shifting consumer needs, new regulations, massive leaps in tech. To alter the pattern of competition and prevent decline, continuous change isn't just a nice-to-have anymore, it's practically mandatory for business survival today. By adapting to these shifts, a company can rejuvenate its growth, attract first-time buyers, and essentially avoid being left in the dust.
Section 2. Organizational inertia. The emergency brake.
If innovation is the accelerator, organizational inertia is the emergency brake. Think about a time a new tool or policy was introduced at your job. Almost everyone complained or dragged their feet at first, right? I mean, that's just human nature. Our sources note that this friction is absolutely worst in stodgy bureaucracies wedded to that classic "we have done it this way for years" syndrome. Just look at the massive failures of change-resistant giants like Kodak, Blockbuster, or Sears. By clinging to the past and whatever made them successful previously, they refused to alter their operating practices. And honestly, it completely destroyed their market standing.
Now, you might be wondering, what does resistance actually look like? Well, resistance doesn't always look like a loud, angry protest. Sometimes it's completely quiet. The source materials highlight a concept called organizational silence. So the crucial point is, alongside defensive routines, organizational silence is a specific, insidious form of resistance. It creates a massive barrier to successful strategy implementation. When employees don't voice their concerns but just quietly refuse to adopt new ways of working, that silence literally kills strategy.
Section 3. Types of organizational change. Shifting landscapes. To tackle this, the literature identifies 3 primary, overarching types of organizational change. First, you have evolutionary change. This is your step-by-step, gradual adjustments made to respond to a changing environment. Second is revolutionary change. This happens when organizations are forced to change by huge external forces, like a hostile takeover. And finally, there is directed or planned change. This is a deliberate, purpose-driven approach where leadership actively takes the wheel to align the culture with new strategies. And this brilliantly illustrates how directed change breaks down even further. Notice the specific subtypes of change strategies here. You can go from strategic transformational change, which impacts the whole organization, all the way down to people-centric change, which focuses on those highly emotional employee transitions. This proves that change isn't just a blunt instrument. There's a specific structured tool for every single scenario.
Section 4. Lewin's 3-step change model, a framework for action.
So how do we apply this? Enter Kurt Lewin. Lewin's foundational model is beautifully simple and highly tangible. Imagine a giant block of ice. Step 1 is unfreezing. This stage minimizes the forces maintaining the current status quo. Essentially, you're melting the block of ice to prepare people for transition.
Step 2 is moving or change. This is where you pour that melted water into a totally new mold. You implement the actual change, providing fresh perspectives. And finally, step 3 is refreezing. You put that new mold back into the freezer to stabilize the new organizational balance, locking the behaviors into place so people don't just naturally revert to their old ways.
Section 5, Overcoming Resistance to Change. Dealing with pushback.
But how do you actually melt that ice when you're dealing with individual employees who instinctively push back? Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown of overlapping circles is the very human drivers behind the resistance. People push back because of self-interest. They worry about the personal impact over the business. They resist due to a low tolerance for change, basically preferring the security of their comfortable routines. And finally, misunderstanding. Without crystal clear communication, employees instinctively assume the worst, like maybe they'll lose their jobs or get a pay cut. These are highly emotional reactions that completely block rational thinking.
Section 6, Making the Strategy Stick. Ensuring lasting change.
Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable tactics. To permanently embed innovation into your culture, our sources outline some distinct solutions. First up, listen directly to employee concerns to reduce that frustration. Second, clearly define the what, why, and how. Third, empower the natural leaders within your staff. They become powerful role models for a top-down culture shift. And lastly, leverage rational data and evidence as a logical backup to soothe those emotional reactions we just talked about.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, right? From the desperate need for innovation to the step-by-step methods of unfreezing entrenched habits and managing human resistance. I want to leave you with a provocative question based on everything we've analyzed. Will your organization actively and effectively manage change, or will it succumb to inertia and become the next Kodak? Remember, having a great idea is just the beginning. Executing the strategy and bringing your people along for the ride is what ultimately separates the survivors from the forgotten. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.